some placeable classes in the sheep classes. I tried to put them together to be a little bit challenging and educational, but for the most part, I think they sorted fairly well. We start off on the Targhis. These are right out of our Targhee yearly ewes that I kept and grew out. I've got some sorted to kind of pick out some show and sale entries out of, and that's where these 4 ewes came from. If you know anything about the Targhee breed, they are a wool breed. Unfortunately, I didn't give you any data, so you really kind of just have to guess what their fleeces are like, and more so just place them on what you see today. And if we analyze this class and we just stand back and look at them from the basics of sheep production, if we're just looking for soundness, we're looking for body and mass in terms of some maternal aspects, so we're looking for depth and spring of rib. We want some show ring appeal to them as well, so we're looking at some levelness and some femininity. To me, there's a couple of things that you can do. I think the easiest thing to do is to find the ewe in there that probably is lacking in growth and performance. She's small, she's pounds light, she's probably the shallowest and flattest in her rib cage, probably the lightest muscling and narrowest traveling. We thought you should find the one ewe to the bottom fairly easily. So that was kind of the first thing we thought you should do. Then when you analyze the other 3 ewes, I think there's some differences. There's 2 really big ribbed, really wide made ewes that are big down their top. One of them's maybe a little bit leveler down her top, especially out of her hip. Then you got a 3rd ewe that's probably the most feminine ewe in class, but again, compared to the other 2, she gives up some mass and performance. To me, the one that, and I think the committee agreed with us, or agreed with me, the one that put it together the best and made the most complete animal is this 3 ewes standing here sideways to us. If you compare her to those other 2, she's just a notch leveler down her top. She's the levelest out of her hip. I'd like to change her front end just a little bit, bring that neck up out of the top of her shoulders just a little bit more. But again, that's nitpicking a pretty good ewe. And then the real big rib broody ewe is the 2 ewe. So if you're just looking for a commercial ewe that's going to go out and perform well on pasture, tremendous amount of rib shape on her. She shortens up a little bit. She rounds out of her hip a little bit. Doesn't have quite the extension through her front end that maybe we see of the 2 ewes on either side of her. But then we're going to go ahead and slide that 4 ewe into 3rd hole, just because she does give up some mass and performance today to the top pair. So the official placing on the Targhee ewes is 3, 2, 4, 1. We cut it 3, 2, and 5. So if you didn't find the 1 ewe on the bottom, you got hurt a little bit, you could scramble those top 3 ewes and really not get hurt too awfully bad. We listened to reasons on the Hamp bucks over there. This is a class that I used for the triathlon contest here a month or so ago. So it is kind of a college-geared class, but I think it works at this level as well. You got data on this, and you know, as ag teachers, I'd encourage you to teach your kids a little bit more about estimated breeding values, or EBVs and EPDs, in cattle and hogs. These are getting to be industry standards, and the sheep industry is behind the other 2 species in using them, but we're developing quite a clientele. This is actual data on these Hamp bucks. If we run through it, you know, we are looking at estimated breeding values, so this is essentially how their offspring is going to perform for these different traits. The Carcass Plus Index is a combination we'll talk about in a minute. Birth weight is essentially how heavy their lambs are going to be at birth. In cattle, we worry about them being too high. In sheep, we're not to that point yet. Okay? So as long as they're good, solid birth weight numbers, we don't really usually spend much time on that. Weaning weight is important. That's essentially telling us how quickly those lambs are growing from birth to weaning. It indicates some of the ewe's mothering ability, but most of it is just their genetics for fast growth up to the weaning point. Post-weaning weight is taken at 120 days of age, so that's how they grow from weaning at 60 days to post-weaning at 120. That's essentially feedlot growth, okay? So for this scenario, that's pretty important. Right now, that's what producers in the feed yards are getting paid for, is how fast those lambs grow in the feed yard. So we want that high number. Fat depth is essentially how lean or how fat they are at their endpoint. We take that at that 120 days as well. A negative number is kind of what we're looking for, because we're pulling the fat off of these animals, so the lower the number, the better, to a point. What happens if we get them too thin or too lean? Then we wind up with contemporary females that we're trying to keep back that don't produce very well because they don't retain finish and fat. They get to be hard doing in pasture situations. So we want to be careful, but we still do want a negative number over a really high positive number, so to speak, if we're looking at carcass animals. And then loin-eye depth in sheep, we measure a depth measurement and equate that to how much actual ribeye size or loin-eye size they're going to have in carcass traits. Right now, the sheep industry doesn't pay you for muscle. They just pay you for pounds. Okay, so we want some, because we don't want to produce a bunch of fat animals. But again, the level of emphasis we put on loin-eye is a little bit lighter, or a little bit lower than what we put on the growth traits, so to speak. Okay? So in this scenario, we're looking for fast-growing range rams. So we want some muscle, but most importantly, we want them to grow fast. Which one does that? The one ram. He grew extremely fast. He's almost double the other rams in this class. Okay? Now, I'd like to see his loin depth number higher. He needs to be higher. That negative 1.9 or 1.19 is a little bit low, okay? But again, with a growth like that, and you look at him in the pen, he's the big, stout, heavy-muscled, fast-growing ram of the class. What's his problem? Number one, that loin depth. But number two, he's a little bit out in his hocks. When he moves around the ring, he's a little bit wide, a little bit loose in his hocks. So we criticize him for that, but it's not enough to throw him away. We're going to use that ram to start this class, okay? The other thing that we thought you should know, and I guess we originally thought this was kind of a two-pair class, but the more I look at it, the more I think there's one that falls to the bottom, and most of you found him. There's a ram in here that's short, to look at him, he's fat. A lot of you said he's heavy muscle, but to me, he's kind of counterfeit. He's fat, he's flat through his lower leg, but most importantly, he's straight off of both ends. He's very uncomfortable on the move. He roaches in his top, he's really straight in his shoulder, straight in his hock, and doesn't move very well. That's the 2 ram. Put him on the bottom, okay? Put him on the bottom, okay? So then I think it comes down to some other parts of the scenario. We asked you to rank these rams on their ability to be range rams, but also we sell a few lambs for club lambs, for show lambs. Which ram looks the most like a show lamb? The 4-buck. Really good hip, really level and down his top. He's good from his rear 2/3 for sure. We change him a little bit right there behind his shoulders. We change his front legs just a little bit. But he's the other big ribbed ram. He's the other sound-ended ram from the rear end. You know, really good hip. He's probably got the most explosion through his stifle, okay? And on paper, he's probably the 2nd best ram in the group, okay? So we put him 2nd. The 3 ram has got a couple of class advantages. He's really cool to look at. In terms of comfort and movement, he's probably the soundest ram in the class. But he's also the finest boned, he's also the narrowest and flattest ribbed, he's the shallowest bodied, and he's the lightest muscled ram in the class. But if you just evaluate him for structure and soundness and you didn't have those other big old stout rams in there, he moves around the ring pretty well. He's probably the most comfortable on his stride, the way he holds himself together. Okay? But we still think he just gives up too much performance and too much growth and too much muscle to get into the top pair. Okay? I still think, for the scenario, I think there's reasons for switching the top pair. You can put 4/1. I don't see a whole lot of reason to get 2 or 3 off the bottom pair. So we went to a final placing of 1, 4, 3, 2. Got you 2 on the top, 3 on the bottom, and 5 in the middle. Okay? Now, maybe the toughest class for you guys. Polypace. How many of you have ever seen polypace before? A few of you have. Okay? They're not really a show ring breed, so we look at them a little bit different. That's where this comes really into, and this breed is where this is really important. This is the direction the polypace breed is moving, is to data. And what's the polypace breed known for? Maternal traits. Okay? So weaning weight, more so litter weight. We want them to wean a lot of heavy lambs. Okay, so we're looking at number born, number weaned, hounds weaned, and how much milk they produce. So those are the 4 pieces of data that are important. Those 4 happen to go into making up the USA Maternal Index. Okay? Oh, back to the rams. One thing I did want to mention. The 2 ram, the QR, okay, that is a negative for him. Some of you made the mistake of telling me, though, that he carried scrapie. He doesn't carry scrapie. If he did, I guarantee I'd be in trouble. He is susceptible to contracting it somewhere down the line. Okay? Or more importantly, he's going to throw offspring that could be even more susceptible to it. He doesn't have it. That's not what that means. That's a resistance factor. We're breeding for RRs, so we have resistant sheep that will never contract scrapie, but he doesn't carry it. Okay? So just be careful in sheep when you say that. Okay? So back to the polypace. We're looking for maternal sheep that have some eye appeal to them. Soundness is as long as they're moving around the ring, okay, soundness is in the eye of the beholder on these sheep. If they're a little cowhawk, that's not bad. Sheep or animals are made that way in nature. Okay, so we're a little bit more relaxed on that. We're a little bit more relaxed on how round they are at their hip. We're a little bit more relaxed on how they dip behind their shoulders. Those kind of things go into making them look pretty in the show ring, but it really doesn't have anything to do with how sound they really are out in the barn. Does that make sense? Actually, animals that are a little bit more relaxed are better than animals that are perfectly straight, perfectly level, and get really straight in their shoulder and their hock. Okay? So try to kind of think about that when you're evaluating some of this livestock. If they're a little easier in their structure, that's not always bad. Make sense? So we're going to look at them mostly on their data. To me, there's one that really just stood out, both on her data and when we turned around and looked at her. That's the 7U. Really high on her maternal index. And one of the things that I threw in there that's beginning to gain some steam is parasite resistance. she's got the most parasite-resistant data in the group, or one of the most. A negative 15.6 is a huge plus for her. So in other words, that means we can turn her out in grass, and she's not going to get affected by parasite load quite as much as some of the others. Okay? So that's a big strength for her, along with her maternal data. When you turn around and look at her, she's one of the biggest, growthiest, whitest made, biggest ribbed, and probably one of the levelest designed ewes in the class. We thought you should keep her pretty quickly. We thought there was another one that sorted her way up, similar on data, and then when you turn to look at her, she's not too bad to look at either, and that's the 3U. So we think you should have kept those 2 ewes pretty quickly. On the other end, there's 1 ewe that falls out of bed on data. That's the 2U. And then when you turn around and look at them, to me, there's one that phenotypically or looking at her falls out of bed, and that's the 4U. We thought you should have culled both of those 2 ewes pretty quickly. Okay? So then you got 4 ewes to kind of pick from in the middle. They're fairly similar on data. There's maybe a couple of things that sort them a little bit. We thought that maybe the next ewe that was strong on data, and I think where I really like her is her number born, number weaned, is the 5U. Plus she's still negative for fecal egg count. She's got some growth to her as well in terms of post-weaning weight. And she's just kind of right at her, just a little bit above breed average for USA maternal, so we went ahead and kept 5. The next one we decided to go ahead and go to the other end with was the 1U, and I think mostly because she's pretty low on number born, and also a little bit low on some of the growth traits as well. I will give her advantage in maternal milk. I do like that. I wish that some of the others were a little bit higher in milk, and if you kept her because of that, I wouldn't argue with you a bit. So far we've kept 7, 3, and 5. We called 1, 4, and 2. So you're down to 6 and 8 is all you got left. I think we decided to go ahead and use the 6U because she's still negative for fecal egg count, and the 8U is getting a little bit high there in terms of parasite resistance for the scenario. But again, I wouldn't argue with you much if you went the other way. And I don't think we hurt you too bad in the points, okay? So here's your points you get. If you kept 7, you got 18. If you kept 3, you got 15. If you kept 5, you get 9. If you kept 6, you get 8. If you kept 8, you get 6 points. And if you kept 1, you get 5 points. We only gave you 1 point for keeping 4, and we didn't give you any for keeping 2, okay? So you can figure out how to get your score on that, add up the points for the numbers that you kept, and that tells you what you got. Make sense?